My name is London Rain. Thank you for joining me in my studio, and today I'll show you how I rescored Star Wars. First of all, Happy New Year to everybody, and a special shout out to Corbinian for suggesting this format to me. If you don't know about him, definitely go check him out. I've always wanted to write music to picture, and this was my first time doing it, so I kind of wanted to take you along on this learning experience, because a lot of things that are important for doing this are applicable to whatever style of music you're creating, so let's get into it. Before we get started, we have to look at the scene that we're working with, so here it is. The scene that I chose is about a minute long. I am going to speed this up a little bit though, so it doesn't get too boring. The whole thing takes place in a desert where Rey is just standing there by herself, kind of just breathing and staring in the distance. After that, we got a TIE shuttle racing through the screen, transitioning to this chase between her and the shuttle, and the whole scene ends with her doing this slow-mo backflip above the shuttle, and we fade to black. So how do you approach something like this? I didn't really find a definitive answer. Usually the movie or whatever you're doing gets spotted, which means you're discussing where to put music and what kind of music with the director. But since I only had this 1 minute scene to do, I just kind of went for it. After a little research, I found out that a good first step is to do a sketch, most commonly with a piano. So I started doing that to kind of outline the basic melody and harmony. I'll show you what I came up with right now and kind of explain my thought process behind it. So I watched some videos on John Williams and kind of the music theory behind Star Wars soundtracks. What I found is that the G minor chord is kind of a thing there, so I wanted to start with that. To be able to build energy throughout the scene, I wanted to start with just the root note, which is the G. Very basic rhythm, nothing too crazy. After that, brought in the fifth, which is going up to the sharp 5 every now and then to kind of build tension. After the voice said its first little sentence, I wanted to bring in the main theme, and after some time I came up with this. Now that I had that, the hardest part was basically over, because once you have that main theme, you have a great foundation to build the rest of your track on. You have something that you can develop and something that the listener can hold on to. So I went along with the score and mostly stayed on the darker side of moods, but then I had this text coming up that said every generation has a legend. So I briefly switched to a major chord to give that whole moment a more heroic vibe. After that, instantly went back to minor to get the viewer back in the situation that a threat is coming closer and closer. After the ship passed the screen, I went with the very cliche dun dun Star Wars chord progression to kind of give that lightsaber a little more impact. The ship is coming closer and closer, so I wanted to speed it up a little bit, get a little more hectic, so I changed signature. Before we were in 3/4, now we're in 4/4. Also going with a faster rhythm and moving higher and higher in pitch and ending it right at the moment where she's in the air above the ship. So now that I had the basic idea down, it was all about orchestrating it. So I went with the string ensemble by Native Instruments and the BBC Symphony Orchestra by Spitfire Audio. I started with the double bass, doing the root notes and the fifths of every chord. I'm doing one take for each of the lines, playing everything in by hand and doing that the whole minute, so everything feels as realistic as possible. Next was the main melody, so I chose some violins and violas, again doing one full take for each layer and playing it in by hand. Now I had everything that I sketched out with the piano earlier, and together it sounded like this. Before doing anything else, I wanted to make the string section sound a little more full and came up with this contrasting line. Now in context. All of those violas and celli are doing their own little melody throughout the score to contrast the main theme and give a little more movement. I was still kind of missing some high-end energy, so after introducing that main theme for the first time, I had two violins come in and play the same thing an octave higher. That main melody always has that one note that it's staying at for a while, and I wanted to fill that gap, so I grabbed some flutes, clarinets, marimbas and the glockenspiel, and I almost wanted them to repeat what the main theme was doing to get some kind of call and response effect. Before I went to the drums, I want to give those cliche Star Wars chords a little more impact. Went with a trumpet and some trombones and played this in. Now to really make it hit, I added some timpani, playing the 1 and the 5 of every chord. Also adding some cymbals, swells, some crashes and a bass drum. Here's how all of that sounds like. I added this harp for some ear candy and sang in this scream. To just totally go crazy with the low end, I added another double bass, layered that with the Stack by Spitfire, which sounds like this. To make it sound like a real orchestra, I recorded my speakers for every instrument, mixed all of that together, and then mixed the whole score together with the audio that the video came with. I'll show you how the whole thing turned out in a minute. I just uploaded the stems as well as the whole score to my Patreon. You can support what I do over there or right here by liking or subscribing. As always, I really appreciate you taking your time watching this, and I'll see you next Sunday. Love.
We've passed on all we know.